Okay, right. Okay, well, so in last stream I was working, trying out how dark theme would look on front end social, and I will try to finish the feature in today's stream. Okay, so let's go back. Huh, front end, so I'll just open the code base and okay. So let's run the backend server. That's right. Engine start. Could just without using, I could use Mormon. I don't think I have. Yeah, I have Mormon installed locally. So we can run serve. This will run front end. Successfully connected to the database. And so let's try. Okay, it's still compiling. Let me just redo this one bit. Okay, so it's running on 8080. Let's go 8080. Yeah. Okay. So okay. So last time we were on the tools. I think on technologies page. Which one? Yeah, we fixed the city, and the only thing that was remaining was, I guess, technologies. Yeah, profile page. Links attached. This looks okay. This looks okay. Uh, we'll leave this for now as work. Otherwise, I won't be able to do this like one time. And I am a developer. I need to fix that, or should I like? I'm a developer. Does that look odd? Uh, I'm a developer. I think this looks okay. Should I change text color maybe? Color like blue, and let's try changing color for this. Is that applying? I think it's hard coded somewhere here. It's weird that, okay, right. Even if I apply the color, it's set to opacity, right? So if I disable this color, it's actually same color. So, but in opacity, it should look somewhere somewhat different, or should, is it fine as it is? I don't think that looks okay with the opacity. Well, let's leave that for now. And this one looks almost done. So for tools, I can't force. Okay, technologies page. I'm not still sure because I don't think there is data on the front end. So maybe let's do this. And there is that video call or event page. We'll go click to join call, create video, test topic, create video call, and this also looks okay to me at least. Uh, Allow. To access your camera, I have chosen one single camera for both streaming and I don't know why I can't change the camera. Where to access your camera? Again, let's leave the camera for now, but the text and everything looks different. So probably need to do the setting icon, cancel restricted access. Okay. Cancel. I think we need to add color something for this icon. Events. I think we can push this for now and then add one more. So I need to add sort of like toggle in the header to switch to the dark mode. Okay, so I'm not sure of what they use it here. Like we will actually will do is we'll go to header and then this is the header navigation bar, and in the navigation bar we'll add a toggle to switch the theme. I think it should be like okay. So this is a bit of a difficult problem. Like the header scope is different and the whole code scope is different. If I need to change the theming for this, the styles or default class should be applied at like the top or root level here, like at body or at the app level. And so that our toggle will stay here in the header component, and we need to trigger event from header that will change it in the app. So how do we do that? Header, this is the main, and we do that. Okay. So first, let's try manually changing all the values. So let's try first changing the default theming variables to light and dark. From here we have our CSS variables defined here. Where is it? Right, here are the CSS variables, and we need to be able to switch theme from here. Right. or maybe add that in settings, in the profile settings probably. Let's try that changing manually. Store data names. Okay, this is header navbar, and okay, I don't know exactly. Okay, this is the data. The company copyright text created. Let's try adding a class here. Class is equal to theme dark, and okay, attribution class should be on a new line. Let's add that on the new line. What's this problem now? Fix all order cell problems. So it's on the new line. I don't know Vue.js much to make. Okay, how do I do this in Vue? Right. So what we really want to do is based on a click event, we want to change the class name, and that would like change these CSS variables. That is it. Yeah, these one. Oh, we'll try to do this. This is change CSS variables. Okay, you can see the operating is JavaScript, right? Date CSS variables with class name. Is that even possible? And add a class name using CSS custom property. Make your CSS with CSS custom. Okay, that's yes, so root, yes, so CSS variable formula. Again,
Spotify Premium and enjoy uninterrupted streaming. Tap the banner to learn more.
Okay, left, right. Okay, so I don't want to add this like event listener or any. I want if the site is working in Vue, I want to use Vue.js. I'm not add a listener or anything like that. I don't want to do that hacking. Okay, so how do I do this? Yes, dynamic. How can we shift them like okay, dark mode. This is not what I'm looking for. What I really want to do here is I want to have like a change of class name, and that should update the variables. Could we like I'm not sure. Okay, so can we do it like dark theme and do it like this? If it is a dark theme, then use this. Right. And say if we okay theme dark. Right. Okay, got it. So we can specify it like here. So if I change that in the app here, if I change the name dark theme And if I add that, okay, that didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. What is scope CSS variables? And then a selector that defines its scope, right? There is a root, and right, actually we can define CSS variables based on theme dark. Okay, let's change this theme dark, and based on the scope, and then we can change that here. Theme dark. Okay, and then we'll change the class name here in the app to theme dark. Right, okay, theme dark. Okay, it's working for some part, not every part. Okay, theme dark. So what it says is right. It specifies the background and everything. Right, because our body background is defined here. Instead, I think we should move that to app level, or oh, now it's working. Okay, right, and we can change this CSS variable. And we can change this class name based on some custom component we can add here. So if I add something like okay, so span, I just want to see like how styling would look here. Span, span, uh, span, okay, mode. Okay. Right. Okay. So I change the body background in the developer tools, but I forgot to do it like here in the app. I want to do it like this. Right. Okay. Nice. Okay. So it's rendering here. What I really want to do it like okay, I'll just ping the guy. And okay. So if this we're going to change, maybe for keep track of what user has selected as a theme, we need to like save that as like data, and I'm not familiar with Vue, so how is this reactive data that you can change? Vue.js state. Okay, I know about React, but how do you change Vue.js state? Vue.js reactive state. Vue explain visually. Reactivity in depth. State management. Yeah. Often growing information for reactive developers. Yeah. New data source of truth. Okay, so this is the store. We can adopt a store pattern. So I don't think we really want to set the theme support. Sorry, theme switcher in the data store, but rather than on the component level. View components tab. View component data. Component basics. Right. Okay. So this is the data. Define the new component called button counter. Returns count 0. Okay. And then you can use that as a like count. Okay, got it. So data function return count. So the data should go in like here. Nav links, and this is copyright. I'll just add that here. So is dark mode. I'll make this as like a pulling. So by default, I'll keep that as like false, and maybe we should add it like some sort of that can be saved in local storage, but that can be done in later stage. So if it is dark mode, then keep that as a false. And if I okay, right, created store dispatch. So I want this dark mode. I define it as a false for the app component data. Then I want to change this on click of this mode change. I don't know if this has on click. I don't know. Okay. We click, we close once. I'll have to see how do you. Okay, so first let's add a function that will like click me function that can count. Okay. As a custom element inside Google Instance. Okay, you click 10 times. You click 0 times. Okay, where is like changing the value of it? I don't really get that. Driving components. Okay, production. I don't want that. Okay, view instance, template syntax, class and style and component basics. Yeah, and okay, that's data. Okay, right. We on click. Right, that's how you add a click. And then you add the okay, right, got it. So this is how you write, and if I am going to write, I'll make that as a like button, and just to like we are sort of doing this as a experiment on what would happen, and I want to set whatever it is to switch. So if it is dark mode, whatever it is dark mode, yeah. So change that. Expected at the rate instead of V on. Yeah. Quick fix. Fix this view style. Right. Okay. At the rate click. It says that expected one line. Open tag button. Okay. Okay. This really started to bug me. Okay. Okay, so if I change this, it would sort of like change the. Okay, let's see if that changes. And how are we going to know for sure? Like, okay, so add Vue.js add a style class on condition. Vue.js add Vue.js change class conditionally class how to conditionally apply class in Vue.js. With React, I know how to do that. How to do that with Vue. Like a V bind class. If it is active, right? Page is equal to page item. Bind class you have to use. Okay, Vue bind class. I really used to like this AngularJS style syntax, but now I want to know how to use it. Okay, right. Okay, v bind class, v bind, view bind colon class, and add active if its active is true. And okay, right. Okay, so we'll just copy this and we will add it here. Right. Okay. Right. And fix this problem. Yeah. So we don't have is dark mode. Has dark mode or is dark mode? Is dark mode. Okay, is dark mode is dark mode, and we'll make that blank. And if it is, and then we'll use that same class theme dark. Otherwise, if it is not, then it should be theme light. Right. Again, I think we could do this better in like one condition rather than doing two, but let's fix that later. Fix this view again. Okay, let's try this now. It should be able. Okay, where is my mode? Okay, nothing happened. Let's first see like what. Okay, it got applied theme light. And if I change this, nothing is happening, right? Okay. Is that even changing value or something? I think I'll just install Vue DevTools to sort of check if we get the Chrome extension. It's just to see if our Vue enable this item. I already have this. And let's see if it is changing classes or sorry, it's changing the component data or not. 8080. Let's read it. Where is it exactly? I don't see. Right here. Would open DevTools and look for the Vue panel. Where is Vue? Yeah. Root. There is our app, and its dark mode is false. And if we change that, okay, so the click isn't working, but if we change this false to true, I guess, right. Okay, so our theming is working. I just need to figure out like why my button is not working. Otherwise we are almost good to go. Yeah, if you change that, true, false, true, it's working. Okay, on click, Vue.js, on click, event handling, and we on click, counter is equal to counter plus one. So what I really should have done here, like, okay, whatever dark mode is, set that to toggle, sort of like whatever was previous, change that. Okay, so now if we, okay, so the default is false, right? And now if we click this, voila, now it's changing. Yeah, maybe I should add this as like a feature, and then maybe, yeah, so theme switching is working. I just need to add some view element to handle this, as well as uh, so there will be some element in the header, or probably here or here. Let me check this because I have my device on like zoomed in. How, where can I like keep that switch? Maybe here in the drop down, tools, technologies, or where exactly? Okay, so what I'll do is like create a draft pull request for this. So instead of like adding a feature that can be added later, I'll just add this support and just hide this button that can be later switched with anything else. And one thing I'm wondering about is like if this thing where sorry, if switch, if this mode switch is where to be moved in this header. Right now our dark mode selected or not, lives in the app component state. But if we were that to move to header, and if we change the class, maybe we'll have to do some kind of like either keep that in store, or keep that in local storage, or that way it would be better. But then you'll also have to add a listener to local storage. I don't want to do that. So it's better to like keep this in component state, or maybe in store, in the Vue.js store. Okay. So for now we have. Okay, I'll just switch it back. Settings and 25 zoomed in. Right. Okay. So we'll just hide this button for now. That changes the mode, and then we already only have for now like dark mode values. I also need to have correct color values for the light light, right? For the light theme as well. And for this, it should be white. What's the primary color? Uh, so I will find this exactly where it is used, and then right in the app, and then we'll check what's the value right now here, because we changed the value, or maybe I could just use git. Uh, right, it was this. We don't need to change do that. In the light, this is the primary color. What's the secondary color? Uh, I got view, light, and I'll just see what exactly the. So what were the previous values before that? Yeah, this one. And we'll switch that. So we'll add that value for the light mode. Yeah, and link color. Link color is here. So let's see what was there first. It was actually this color. Yeah. So let's add that for inside the light theme. And right again. So now we have two sort of right again. Okay, so let's commit this code. Uh, should I reveal this first, because I think I added a lot of changes after that as well. I'll just switch to a new branch, create new branch, feature slash dark mode. And that's a new branch. Then I'll just stash all the changes. Stage, no, stash dark mode. Right, okay, and we'll now rebase. So let's first we will pull all the changes that are on the upstream branch, and okay, git branch. Okay, how do I change the branch? I really need to learn. Git fetch. Okay, that doesn't do anything. We need to fetch from the upstream. Fetch upstream. Fetch upstream slash master. Okay, what's the git status? The branch is up to date. Nothing to commit. Working to clean. Fetch upstream. More to version check. Okay, upstream. Okay. Fetch upstream. upstream slash master. Okay, Fader does not appear to be a Git repository. Read from there. Okay, what I'm doing now. Fetch upstream. Maybe I'll just switch to Git bash. Right here. Fetch origin and master. Fetch upstream and master. Okay, Fader is refusing to fetch info current branch on their response. Okay, how do I do this? It fetch upstream, catch up my git photo after. Maybe I'll just write my own. So right. Uh, Remote add upstream. So if I do this, it doesn't actually do anything. Like it doesn't fetch anything, right? Maybe there were no like git log. Let's check that. Allow guest users, and then I'll just manually check that. GitHub. I'll just does it have front end? It should be named as uh, front end upstream, right? So what's the latest commit on the master? Yeah, actually there are no latest changes, and that's why I don't see anything. So I think we are good to go. Let's change this feature dark mode. Then let's push this branch on my own code, and it's pushing. Right, okay, so if I check the forks, this is one of mine, and you'll see this branch is okay, feature dark mode, right? And I'll just save this content, and this one is origin home. Done. Four branches, and I'll just create a PR. Make pull request here. Base master, head repository, couple of friends and social. Choose to see. I don't really. Right, okay. God, I feel. Okay, so we didn't commit our changes, but I just stashed those because I thought there will be some rebate changes and everything. So I pop stash. Okay, and now So we'll create a draft or something like add CSS variables, and then now we'll just comment, and then so now it's compare and pull request. Add dark mode switch. For now, what we have done is request request add CSS variables, uh, for colors, and CSS variable for colors. So we did add a switch. Sorry, add add value for dark mode in app component, switch. Okay, so I'll just list this. Sorry. Alright, again. Add variable for colors. Then what we did was add dark mode value in app component to track the change. And then what we did was, okay, why the list is not showing? Right, okay. Add mode value, switch mode classes, switch mode CSS class based on app component value. Yeah, that we have done. And remaining is like to be added is add a switcher component, switcher component to switch themes. Add a switcher, not component but element, switch themes. Create pull request. Right, okay. Now this is done. We have hidden the value, hidden that button, and everything is like normal. So when you in the later stage, so in the later stage, when we have actually a component, or we have decided that like where the switcher would go. When is you can just enable this and then switch that with the switcher element. Yeah, I think we can stop this stream. Maybe I should pick up some more issues probably later. I think file content animation. Uh, and maybe I should mention this pull request. Uh, in the issue as well. Yeah, and probably later in the theme file, just replace all the color values and everything. And when we do that, a lot of SVG files. Can we do that? Like, I don't think that would take um, much effort to move everything into these CSS variables. Mm, here it is. Here it is. Label. Do we have that value here? Yeah, it's the same value. So it's a secondary color. First, let me check like how many values we need to change. Uh, there are a lot. Maybe later. Yeah. Now we can stop the stream.